Ian Garry is a promising striker with good offensive fundamentals, some solid range defenses that he uses quite well, and he's one of the faster snipers in the sport, lining up his shots extremely precisely. But every single fighter has a weakness. Ian Garry and the left hook have a bit of a complicated relationship. They tend to connect with each other a bit too much. There are occasional times where Ian Machado Garry will resist the left hook. He doesn't want to get too close to it, right? He creates a lot of separation between him and the left hand of his opponent sometimes. His range is his main way of separating from the left hook, but the amount of times it kissed him on the chin was a bit too much, as even not too technical strikers like Gabe Green, who's a tough southpaw, was landing that left hook from distance on him. Also not too technical strikers like Darian Weeks was landing good orthodox left hooks on him. I mean, heck, even Neil Magny was slapping him in like a left hook fashion, because we know Neil Magny doesn't actually throw left hooks. He was slapping him, and he does have that reach to work with. And that's a big component as to what Ian Machado Garry usually does to get away from an opponent's left hook. Range. And when you have a long reach, you're able to connect on him as he's trying to move away from you. Notice all the times that even Neil Magny was landing that left slap on him, it was as Ian Machado Garry was trying to move away. The same kind of movements he would try to make when he fought Song Kenan, for an example. The Song Kenan fight is a big highlight about how the left hook works on Ian Machado Garry. What kind of positions does he get hit in? What kind of positions does he evade the punch? And what happens when you just become a left hook merchant, right? You start spamming the left hook after you had your only success with it. Song Kenan is the only fighter in the UFC to drop Ian Machado Garry, and he did it with the left hook. But you need more than just that in order to get to this guy, to any fighter for that matter. You can't just rely on one weapon to work for you. You gotta work with other stuff. You can't just rely on one technique. You gotta set it up properly with other punches. We know, like, you gotta work with your other tools, man. But Song Kenan was getting pieced up in the first round before he had that success with his left hook that dropped Ian Machado Garry. And as soon as he had that success, he kept going to it and going to it over and over again. And even though it was like 90% of what Song Kenan was throwing in the fight after he dropped him, he still connected with some of them on Ian Machado Garry. Ian was defending some, he blocked a couple of them pretty well, but most of his defense was relied on backstepping away. He's tall and long, moving away from his shorter opponents. Even still, the left hook was getting to him, even against a one-dimensional striker like that. Now we gotta ask, why does this work on Ian Machado Garry? Why does a left hook specifically get to him? Well, the big reason as to why is because he has a lot of confidence on that right hand. He loads it up, and when you load up on your orthodox right hand, you're generally going to drop it or cock it back away from defending your chin. This is exactly why Song Kenan dropped him. He's a moving sniper who drops his right hand often when he's ready to fire it, but he tries to keep you at a range where you cannot hit him and he can hit you. So the opponent would need to have a forward step behind good solid defense in order to counter this, as Ian is purely and only relying on his range as his defense. So get in closer, defend the shot, or get your shot in there first, and he will be open for it. In fact, Song Kenan, before he dropped him, actually had a good entry that he could have used, but he didn't really set it up properly. He respected the right hand from Ian Garry way too much. So what you could do here is, you could fake a step-in jab in order to trigger that response from Ian Machado Garry. Ian's gonna either back away or lean away in order to load up on his right hand to counter you. And all you gotta do is move in closer. Move forward behind the feint. Be aware of the 1-2 from Ian Machado Garry. But the thing is, Song Kenan in this scenario moved away. He was worried of the right hand as he did not trust his own defense against it. Look at the opening. If Song Kenan actually moved forward on the inside of the jab and threw in a short left hook. Watch here from Neil Magny. Now, Magny gets hit by a jab from Ian Machado Garry. He parries way too far away, gets hit by the jab, but he doesn't back away. He actually moves forward after getting hit and throws out that left slap. Can you imagine if this was a full left hook and Neil Magny had the sort of power to hurt Garry with that sort of thing? Daniel Rodriguez, another fighter who doesn't have really good defense. He's a tough guy, fights like a bar brawler. He moved in and got hit by the jab, but continued to move inward as Garry tried to land the right hand. And Rodriguez threw the left hook, and Ian does not move his head. The punch goes behind his head and drags it forward. No real precision or defense from Daniel Rodriguez. Even someone like Darian Weeks, being as tough as he is, he stood in front of Ian Garry, allowed Garry to throw the jab up the center. He threw almost like an uppercut uppercut jab and then try to connect with an overhand over Darian Weeks' shoulder. But notice the difference between Darian Weeks and Kenan. Weeks did not move away from the attack. He stood his ground, trusted his defense, he pulled through, and then went on his own attack as Garry had to get away from him. Again, Garry is the kind of guy who wants to move away to line up his own shots. Long range is his comfort zone. And as he's moving away, he has both of his hands down and Weeks catches him with the left hook. Or what about here where Darian Weeks has Garry up against the fence? So he has limited amount of space that Garry can work with. And what he does to get in close to cover that distance between him and his longer opponent is he throws an inside leg kick. So notice how Garry is already moving out laterally, but his legs are not completely paralleled. His left foot is more forward than his right, but that inside leg kick throws Garry's leg backwards to where now he is parallel with both feet. Look how now both of his feet are side to side. This limits the range that Garry can work with. When you're paralleled, your range forward and back is reduced, but your range side to side is increased, which is not a problem for Darian Weeks because he's going to throw a left hook. So side to side, regardless, that's where his own punch is going to come from. And that reduced linear space allows Darian Weeks to enter forward. So he just goes and throws in a left hook and catches Garry as Garry tried to throw an overhand using that momentum from him getting hit. You can see from these examples of not that technical of strikers, they're able to get through the opening on Machado Garry. Now, can you imagine what Shavkat could do? Right? I'm not too surprised that there's a rumor that Shavkat knocked him out in sparring because that's a kind of guy that could do this to him. Leon Edwards could do something kind of similar. Jeff Neal can absolutely do this. Machado Garry has not gone up against really good strikers that understand these openings. He went up against Neil Magny, who found these openings, a guy that doesn't really throw punches like that. He throws more jabs than anything else, and that's really what he relies on. Straight punches mostly. Daniel Rodriguez fights like a brawler. Gabe Green, another guy who fights like a brawler. Darian Weeks has more understanding of the wrestling than he does the striking. He's not totally technical on the feet either. Even Machado Garry's next opponent, Vicente Luque, he has a decent left hook, but he has declined. He had good offensive technique, but no defense whatsoever. I think he could find the left hook on Garry, but where he is at in the state of his career right now, I'm not too confident in it. He has greatly declined. And even Kenan has a good left hook, but that's all he threw. There was nothing else he was really throwing, like a leg kick here and there, a right straight over the shoulder here and there. 90% of his attacks were left hooks, and Machado Garry is a human being. Human beings adapt when you keep doing the same thing to them. If Kenan mixed up the striking more and was more aggressive, not backing away from Garry so much, he could have found way more left hooks on Machado Garry 100%. He was finding left hooks later as well, even though Machado Garry only had to focus on it. He only had to focus on the left hook, which is exactly what he was doing. Had his right hand glued to his head after getting dropped and still got caught by left hooks. His pure and only focus was on the left hook, and he was still getting caught by it occasionally. So again, Machado Garry and the left hook do have a complicated relationship. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and if you did, make sure to give this a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.